chest section of the leg. So, as a rule of the anatomy, before we go into the section of any part, we should know the arrangement of the bones in that region. So, leg is the continuation of the knee joint below. So, the knee joint, the lower part is formed by the upper end of the tibia with the medial condyle and lateral condyle, and anteriorly there is a tibial tuberosity. Then this is the medial border of the tibia, and the lower end is expanded medially as the medial malleolus. This is the lateral border of the tibia, and this is the anterior border. And the lower end of this tibia articulates with the ankle joint formation, that is the superior surface of the talus. And lateral bone is the fibula. The head of the fibula articulates with the tibia in the upper end to form the superior tibiofibular joint. Then the expanded head suddenly narrows down to form the neck, which is the weak point of the fibula. Fracture occurs at the neck of the fibula. And this is the interosseous or the medial border of the fibula. And again below, the fibula is articulating with the lateral part of the lower end of the tibia to form the inferior tibiofibular joint. This is the shaft of the tibia of the fibula, and lower end is expanded as the lateral malleolus, which articulates with the similar facet on the lateral surface of the talus. So this is the lateral malleolus, this is the medial malleolus. And the tibia and fibula, they also form the medial tibiofibular joint, which is the interosseous membrane attached to the tibia and fibula. And there is in the upper part there is a gap, plus there is a small opening in the interosseous membrane in the lower part. So this is how the interosseous membrane forming the middle tibiofibular joint. And below is the foot, and we know all the articulation of the tarsal bones in the foot. So this was the talus, which articulates with the lower end of the tibia to form the ankle joint. And the talus, the inferior surface, it articulates with the laterally with the calcaneum bone, and medial part of the talus bears a head of the talus with this anterior articular facet, which articulates with the board-shaped bone, that is the navicular. And this is the calcaneum bone on which the talus is resting. Then this navicular bone articulates with the three cuneiforms, medial, intermediate and the lateral cuneiform, while the anterior part of the calcaneum, it articulates with the cuboid bone. And the medial cuneiform is attached to the first metatarsal of the great toe, which is having the two phalanges, proximal and distal. The intermediate cuneiform articulates with the base of the second metatarsal, and the first digit had got three phalanges, proximal, middle and distal phalanx like the upper limb. The lateral cuneiform, it articulates with the third metatarsal, which articulates with the head of the metatarsal articulates with the three phalanges. Then the cuboid bone will articulate with the fourth and the fifth metatarsal, having the three phalanges, and the lateral part of the cuboid articulates with the metatarsal of fifth metatarsal, the little finger with the three phalanges, and the base of the fifth metatarsal literally has got a tuberosity on the lateral part of the base. So this is how the bones arranged in the foot as well as in the leg, the anterior part. After we have finished with the knee joint, superiorly, the lower end of the femur with the patellar surface, we have done it. So leg is divided into three compartments. The anterior, lateral and posterior. The anterior compartment, lateral compartment and the posterior compartment. Posterior is further divided into a superficial and a deep compartment. So we will go one by one, all the compartments. So first we will do the anterior compartment. So all these three compartments, they are visible when we cut the transverse section of the leg. So this is the skin covering the, and just below the skin there is a superficial fascia, the yellow color fat, with loose alveolar tissue and cutaneous artery, veins and nerves contents in cut section of the leg. Then below the third layer of the human body, that is the deep fascia. And bones are also cut. The tibia, bone which is a triangular bone in cut section. And there is a fibula bone, and in between there is the interosseous membrane is also cut. So from the deep fascia encircling the leg is called the fascia cruris, as fascia lata was the deep fascia of the thigh. So here it is called the fascia cruris. And from the lateral border of the fibula, two septa go from the encircling fascia cruris and attached to the lateral border of the fibula. Similarly, from the soleal line of the tibia, a fascia goes to the posterior border of the fibula and divide the posterior compartment into superficial and deep. So these septa are the partition of the leg compartment. So hence three compartments are visible: anterior, lateral and the posterior superficial and posterior deep compartment, which is behind this. And the anterior border and the medial surface of the shaft of the tibia is subcutaneous. The anterior border and medial surface of the tibia bone is subcutaneous, and it is popularly known as the shin of the tibia. So anterior border and medial surface, they are just below the skin. So from this area, this is called the shin of the tibia. And shin of the tibia is subcutaneous. Only skin is covering, no muscle is attached to it. So in any front injuries of usually the motorcycle injury will break the tibia. The shaft of the tibia fracture is very common because of the shin of the tibia, which is the subcutaneous part. Only thin skin, superfascia and deep fascia is covering it. So this is the most fractured part of the tibia. So this is the anterior compartment. So any compartment we have to study. All the compartment has got the muscles, it has got the artery, and it has got the motor nerve to supply the muscles. So every compartment has the different muscles, different arteries and the different nerves to supply them. So in the anterior compartment, as we are doing, so first we will do what are the muscles in the anterior compartment. The name of the muscles of the anterior compartment, they are the tibialis anterior, second muscle is the extensor hallucis longus, third muscle is extensor digitorum longus, and last muscle, the fourth, is the peroneus tertius. So these are the four muscles we know, and we know whenever the muscle comes, 5 fingers comes, the origin, insertion, action, nerve supply and applied. So this is the extensor compartment. All the muscles, the action on the ankle joint, and they bring about the dorsiflexion. So all the muscles, they do the dorsiflexion, that whenever the lower end resting on the talus, so all the muscles, they are inserted here, and whenever there is a foot moves upward, this is called the dorsiflexion. So this is the dorsiflexion action. So first muscle is the tibialis anterior. So as the name suggests, so tibialis anterior means it lies in the anterior compartment, in the anterior aspect of the tibia. So this muscle will originate from the lateral surface of the tibia. So this is the lateral surface of the tibia. So that is the large area of the origin of the muscle, that is called the tibialis anterior. And on the medial surface, there is no muscle is attached. So muscle will not take origin. So it will take origin from the front side of the tibia, and in the front side of the tibia comes the lateral surface. So this is the lateral surface of the tibia, and from here whole of the area will make the origin of the tibialis anterior muscle. So large area of the origin we have to mark whenever asked in the examination. to mark the origin. So this much area you have to mark. So origin, then the insertion. Now this tibialis posterior, the tendon will go downward in front of the ankle joint, and this tendon is marching medially, and it will be inserted on the medial surface of the medial cuneiform bone, or the medial surface of the base of the first metatarsal. So that is the insertion of tibialis anterior. So it is inserted on the middle of the medial border of the foot. Middle point of the medial border of the foot is the medial cuneiform, or the base of the first metatarsal. So we count the metatarsals from the big toe, first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. So this is tibialis anterior. So what will be the action? Action means we contract the muscle. So when the muscle contracts, origin bone is fixed. What will move? Bone of the insertion. So whenever the muscle will contract for the action, then the medial cuneiform and base of the first metatarsal, where they will move? They will move upward. So when they move upward, what this condition is called? Movement is called. What is this action called? Dorsiflexion. So tibialis bring about the dorsiflexion of the medial border of the foot. So that is the action. And this action is very important in the inversion movement of the foot. So that's why tibialis anterior is called the inverter of the foot. Then the second muscle is extensor hallucis longus. Now go into the names of the muscle. They tell many things. So first word of the muscle is called extensor. It means it is telling the action. So the action of this muscle will be the extension at the ankle joint. Extension at the ankle joint is called the dorsiflexion. That the foot will move upward. The fingers and digit will move upward. So this is called the dorsiflexion. Second word is hallucis. Hallucis is used for the great toe. It means this muscle will insert on the either tarsal bones of the great toe. And last word is the longus. So any muscle having the word longus, whether in the upper limb or lower limb, longus means it is long. It is long, and where the insertion will be there? At the last point of the digit. So the longus will be inserted on the distal or the terminal phalanx. So this is the rule. Any muscle having the word longus means it is long, and it will not be inserted on the proximal phalanx. It won't be inserted in the middle phalanx because it is longus. So it will go into the last or the terminal or the distal phalanx. So this is the rule, both in the upper as well as the lower limb. That you have to remember. So many things are told by the name of the muscle. So extensor hallucis longus. Now we do its origin. So origin of the muscle is number one from the anterior surface of the lateral condyle of the tibia. Number one origin. Number two, head of the fibula. Anterior medial surface of the head of the fibula is the second point of view. Then this muscle is interrupted near the neck of the fibula. Then again this muscle is taking origin from the shaft of the fibula. Shaft of the fibula. So number one, number two, number three is the origin of extensor digitorum hallucis longus. Extensor hallucis longus. Then this muscle will run downward toward the foot for the tarsal bone because its name is hallucis. So this muscle will be crossing the front of the ankle joint, anterior surface of the tibia and the talus, and as it has to go towards the hallucis, so this muscle will run towards the great toe and inserted on the dorsal surface of the base of the terminal or the distal phalanx of the great toe. So that is the insertion. extensor hallucis longus. So it is inserted here. So what will be the action? So when this muscle will contract, so what will bring about then the terminal phalanx of the thumb or the big toe will be upward. So when only thumb is going upward, this is called the dorsiflexion of the great toe. So that is the action. Then third muscle is the extensor digitorum longus. Again, the first word is telling that its action is the extension or the dorsiflexion at the ankle joint. Second word is the digitorum. Any muscle having the word digitorum means the tendon will be inserted on the digits. And we know both in the foot as well as the hand there are 4 digits. So any muscle having the word digitorum, it means the tendon of that muscle will be divided into 4 slips. Because it has to go into the every digit, so tendon will divide and 4 slips are there. And if the word is longus, it means every slip of the tendon will be inserted on the terminal or the distal phalanx, because the word is longus. So this is how we have to go into the name will tell everything. So now the origin. So the origin of this muscle is the same as the anterior surface of the lateral condyle of the tibia. No, it is from the mid shaft of the fibula. Middle part of the shaft of the fibula is the origin of the extensor digitorum longus. And then this muscle will come downward in front of the knee joint or the ankle joint, and the tendon of this muscle will divide into 4 slips for every finger. And in every finger, it will be inserted on the dorsal surface of the distal phalanx or the terminal phalanx. It will be inserted over the terminal phalanx. So this is the fate of the extensor digitorum longus muscle. So it is inserted on all digits on its terminal phalanx. So when this muscle will act, so all the tips of the fingers will be moving in upward direction. So when they move in upward direction, so what is this action? This is the dorsiflexion at the ankle joint. So this is the dorsiflexion at the ankle joint. So this is how we do the third muscle. Now the last muscle is peroneus tertius. So this peroneus tertius muscle will take origin from the lower part of the shaft of the fibula. Lower part of the shaft of the fibula, and this muscle will go laterally in front of the ankle joint, and it will be inserted on the base of the 5th metatarsal, the little finger. Base of the little 5th metatarsal, but where? On its medial surface or the medial part. So peroneus tertius is inserted on the medial part on the dorsal surface of the base of the 5th metatarsal is the insertion. So this is it. And what will be the action? So whenever this peroneus tertius will be contracted, so 5th metatarsal bone will be going upward. So what is again? The dorsiflexion of the little finger. That is the action of the peroneus tertius. So this is how we do the origin, insertion and action of these muscles of the anterior compartment. Now comes their nerve supply. As we know, the superficial peroneal nerve in the popliteal fossa is a branch of the sciatic nerve, and this common peroneal nerve runs with the tendon of the bicep femoris. Bicep is inserted on the head of the fibula, but the common peroneal nerve now come and touching the lateral surface of the neck of the fibula. Lateral surface of the neck of the fibula, and here this common peroneal nerve divided into 2 branches. One is the lateral branch, another is the medial branch. The lateral branch is called the superficial peroneal nerve. Lateral branch, the name is called superficial peroneal nerve, and this nerve is the nerve of the lateral compartment of the leg. While the medial branch of the common peroneal comes in front of the neck of the fibula, and there is already gap is there. Why we have left the gap for the origin? Now it is clear. Because the medial branch, which is called the deep peroneal nerve, medial branch of the common peroneal is called the deep peroneal nerve. It has to come anterior surface of the neck of the fibula, so there is an interruption of the origin of the extensor hallucis longus. Because nerve has to pass, it has not to pierce the muscle, otherwise there will be compression neuropathy will be there. So there is already gap is left, and very comfortably the deep peroneal nerve comes on the anterior surface of the neck of the fibula, and now it enters into the anterior compartment and runs in front of the interosseous nerve, interosseous membrane. So this is the deep peroneal nerve course, that how from the lateral part of the neck, then on the anterior surface of the neck of fibula, then it enters into the anterior compartment and runs on the anterior surface of the interosseous membrane between tibia and fibula. Now, this deep peroneal nerve, which is the nerve of the anterior compartment, will be accompanied by an artery that is called the anterior tibial artery. As we have done the popliteal artery in the popliteal fossa, runs obliquely from the hiatus magnus up to the upper border of the interosseous membrane. And here, this anterior tibial artery, here the popliteal artery divided into anterior tibial and posterior tibial. The anterior tibial artery comes into the anterior compartment through a gap on the upper border of the interosseous membrane. And through this gap, this artery runs here, and it also runs and accompanies the deep peroneal nerve. And it also runs on the anterior surface of the interosseous membrane. First, this artery is lateral to the, medial to the nerve in the upper 1/3 of the leg. In the lower 1/3, middle 1/3, it comes anterior to the nerve. And in the lower 1/3, this artery again goes medial to the nerve. So that is the relation of this nerve. Medial, anterior, again medial. So that is the course of the anterior tibial artery in the anterior compartment. And this artery will give branches to all the muscles. 4 muscles we have done. It's a vesicle. Then this artery enters from the leg into the foot. And when it enters on the dorsal surface of the foot, now its name changes, now it is called the dorsalis pedis artery. And dorsalis pedis artery is nothing but the continuation of anterior tibial artery. So this artery goes medially, and it will end near the base or the gap between the first and second metatarsal. So, near the base of the first and the second metatarsal, the dorsalis pedis artery run. And where it starts? It starts by a line drawn at the level of lateral and medial malleolus. That is the line of the ankle joint also. So here the anterior tibial artery ends, and there is a start of what is called the dorsalis pedis artery, at which level a horizontal line is drawn at the level of the lower borders of the lateral and the medial malleolus. And where it ends, terminates, the base of the first and second metatarsal, the gap between the first and metatarsal. Here, this dorsalis pedis artery goes into the sole of the foot. Because in the sole of the foot, a artery is waiting. That is the lateral plantar artery. And this lateral plantar artery is the branch of the posterior tibial artery. So it will anastomose with the medial end of the lateral plantar artery. which also form the plantar arterial arc. And this is the how anterior tibial meet with the posterior tibial. So this is called the collateral circulation. Collateral circulation is that if accidentally, if the dorsalis pedis artery is cut, then the vascular supply of the foot muscle will not be affected because of the communication with the lateral plantar artery. So lateral plantar artery will supply the blood, and vice versa. If the plantar arterial arc on the sole of the foot is cut because of the accident or injury, then this dorsalis pedis artery will be continuing and supplying the blood to the sole of it. So that is called the collateral circulation. Now comes the deep peroneal nerve. As you know, this is the nerve of the anterior compartment. So this deep peroneal nerve will be supplying the muscle, that is the tibialis anterior, then it's supplying the extensor digitorum longus and hallucis longus, and after supplying it, this will also supply the peroneus tertius. And after supplying the peroneus tertius, so this deep peroneal nerve will now enter into the dorsum of the foot. And in the dorsum of the foot, this nerve will divide into two terminal branches. One is the lateral branch, which is a motor branch, and another is the medial branch, which is the sensory branch. So this medial sensory branch of the deep peroneal nerve on the dorsum of the foot will come here, and it will supply the skin between the medial lateral surface of the skin of the great toe and the medial surface of the skin of the first finger. So this part of the skin of the lateral surface of the skin of the great toe and the medial surface of the skin of the first digit. So this is the area supplied by the sensory or the medial terminal branch of the deep peroneal nerve. While the lateral branch go laterally, which is a motor branch, M for M, so it will supply some muscle. And this artery nerve will go laterally and it will end into a pseudoganglion. Its terminal end of the lateral motor branch will be expanded, and what is called pseudoganglion. So why it is called pseudoganglion? Because it is present in the continuation of the nerve, but it doesn't contain any nervous tissue. It is only made up of the nervous connective tissue because of the continuation with the nerve. So it is called the pseudoganglion. So this pseudoganglion lies deep to a single muscle of the dorsum of the foot, that is called the extensor digitorum brevis. So this muscle will supply the extensor digitorum brevis. Again, the origin of this muscle, first was the extensor is the action. Second muscle is the name is the digitorum. So it will, the tendon will of this muscle will divide into 4 slips. Last word is the brevis. Brevis means it is brief. Brief means the tendon will be inserted either on the proximal or the middle phalanx, but they cannot reach the terminal or the distal phalanx. This is the rule of upper limb as well as the lower limb muscle. Any muscle having the word brevis is the brief. Brevis means it is a brief as a small muscle. And longus means a long muscle. So brief muscle. So this muscle, extensor digitorum brevis, is the muscle of the dorsum of the foot. So it takes origin from the lateral surface of the calcaneum. Lateral surface of the calcaneum, and this muscle comes from lateral to the medial side, deep to the tendons of anterior compartment, and this muscle will divide into 4 slips. As the name is digitorum, so it will divide into 4 slips. And every slip, the first slip will go to the great toe, and it will be inserted on the proximal phalanx. The second slip will go into the first finger, and it will be inserted on the middle phalanx. Then the third will go to the second finger, and the fourth last tendon of this muscle will go into the third finger and inserted on the middle phalanx. So whatever is the action, So when this muscle will contract, so it will also bring about the upward movement of the middle phalanx. So that is also called the dorsiflexion. So extensor or the dorsiflexion. So these four slips, they had the additional slips, addition to the extensor digitorum longus. So both the longus, so longus is made for the terminal phalanx, while this muscle brevis is made for the, not only for the fingers but the great toe. And little finger is having no slip. Why? Because it is already having a peroneus tertius, which is not inserted on any other bone. So that is how we do these muscles, and how these muscles, they are having the action, origin, and their nerve supply. So this is how we do the anterior compartment. Four muscles, one artery, that is the anterior tibial artery, and one nerve, that is the deep peroneal nerve, and four muscles. So this is, you have to remember what are the anterior compartment, the name of the artery, name of the nerve, and the four muscles. So this is how we do. Now another thing in the anterior compartment is the extensor retinaculum. Extensor retinaculum. So extensor reticulum in the anterior compartment are two. One is called the superior extensor retinaculum, another is called the inferior extensor retinaculum. The superior extensor retinaculum is a broad thickening of the deep fascia or the fascia cruris. And retinaculum word means they retain, the function of the retinaculum is they retain the tendons of the muscles while they are acting. So that is the action, because we know all the four muscles, they are crossing the ankle joint, and they have to be suppressed. They have to be kept as close as possible to the lower end of the tibia and fibula, so that they cannot injure the overlying the skin, because we know leg is a part of the foot, because foot is resting on the ground and all the digits are there. So this is the bend. So all the muscles which is taking origin from the origin, that is tibialis anterior, extensor digitorum longus, extensor hallucis longus, and peroneus tertius. So they are coming from the anterior compartment and they are marching towards the insertion on the dorsum of the foot. So while these muscles, they are acting, then the skin covering them over them at the bend of the leg and the foot. So what will happen? The skin will be like this when the muscle will act. So it will be stressed. While these muscles, they are contracting and they are pulling upward, so all the tendons will come here and the skin covering them may go ruptured. So what is the solution? That skin should not be ruptured. So what happens? And skin should remain as such like this. So what has to be done? That at the bend of the leg and the foot here on the dorsum, some pressure should be drawn on it, all the tendons, so that they keep in touch with the underlying tarsal bones. So this thick band of the deep fascia, which is retaining the tendons while they are acting for their dorsiflexion action, is called the retinaculum. The superior is a thick band about 5 centimeters and 1.5 inches broad, and medially it is attached to the anterior border of the tibia, and laterally it is attached to the anterior border of the fibula. So this small band is called the superior extensor retinaculum. So it will keep the artery, veins, as well as the nerve and the tendons on it. While the inferior extensor retinaculum is a Y shape, resembling alphabet Y, the stem of this Y is attached to the lateral surface of the calcaneum bone, and the upper band is attached to the anterior border of the tibia, while the lower band of this Y goes medially and slightly downward, and on the medial border of the foot, this lower band will be continuous with the deep fascia of the sole of the foot. So keeping all the tendons on the dorsum of the foot and the and saving the artery and the nerve also below them. So it acts as a savior also from the external injury and making the superficial artery and the nerve to become the protected by this Y-shaped inferior extensor retinaculum from the crushing injuries. So that is how we do these superior and the inferior extensor retinaculum. Now, after doing the origin, insertion, action and result, now last comes the applied anatomy of the anterior compartment. Applied anatomy. Number one, applied is the most common, that is called the foot drop deformity. Is the foot drop. Foot drop deformity. So the foot drop deformity, what happens? Whenever there is a fracture of the neck of the fibula, which is the most narrowest part of the fibula, is the neck of fibula. So it is a weak point of the fibula because upper end of the head of the fibula is expanded. Suddenly it narrows down and it becomes the shaft. So sudden narrowness is the negative point. So here the fracture occurs. Again the below the shaft is again expanded. So this is the narrow span. So fracture is very, very common. So here whenever there is a external injury and the fracture of the neck of the fibula, then common peroneal will be damaged. And common peroneal, when it is cut, then the deep peroneal nerve is also cut. And superficial peroneal is also cut. So when the deep peroneal nerve is cut, so what will happen? So all the muscles, four muscles we have done will be paralyzed. Because this is the motor nerve. So this all the four muscles will be paralyzed, and what will the patient come with the problem? He will come that he can't do the dorsiflexion of the foot. Dorsiflexion of the extension of the ankle joint will be lost. So that will be the problem. Then the flexors of the fingers and the foot, they are okay because they are from the posterior compartment. So they are supplied by the tibial nerve. So they are okay. So what will happen? Flexion will be there. So the flexor muscles of the posterior compartment of the leg will bring the foot like this. Because what is this action? This is the plantar flexion. So plantar flexion is okay because posterior compartment muscles, they are okay. So such a foot is called the foot drop. As we have done in the upper limb, the wrist drop. Because of the radial nerve injury, wrist drop is there. Similarly, there is a foot drop deformity because of the damage to the neck of the fibula, resulting in the damage to the common peroneal and the deep. So that is foot drop deformity. Second is the anterior compartment syndrome. Anterior compartment syndrome. So this anterior compartment syndrome is very common in the cricketers or in the sports injuries. So what happens when a cricket ball is striking in the anterior compartment in the front of the leg, somewhere here? So cricket ball is having very high speed, and all the muscles will be crushed in the anterior compartment. As we know, in the anterior compartment, the muscles, they are present from the lateral surface of tibia. This is the tibialis anterior muscle. From fibula, the muscle is the extensor digitorum longus, then extensor hallucis longus, and one more muscle, the peroneus tertius. So this is how we show the four muscles. They are, and the anterior compartment is a very narrow compartment, and this is the interosseous membrane, and in front of the interosseous membrane there lies the common peroneal nerve, and medially there lies the anterior tibial artery. So arteries and nerve, they are already pressed by the muscles covering them. Posteriorly there is a tough interosseous membrane. So they are always in a compromised state, both the anterior tibial artery and the deep peroneal nerve in the anterior compartment. So whenever there is a cricket ball injury is there, and in the street, children, they are playing the cricket without wearing this leg pads. In earlier time also, in the cricket also, there was no rule of the wearing the pads on the leg. And in the LBW out, the player will be out also, plus he will suffer from anterior compartment syndrome. So because of the repeated anterior compartment syndrome coming in view, because of the LBW out in the cricket, then it has been made compulsory to wear the pads below the knee in the cricket matches, and to save the anterior compartment syndrome. So what happens, because of the impact of the ball on the anterior compartment, all the muscles which are overlying will be crushed. And when the muscles are crushed, muscles are rich in blood supply, so the blood will come out, and the bleeding will be there inside the muscle, and what will happen? There will be hematoma formation. Blood will be clotted, and a clotted blood is called the hematoma. He means blood, toma means like a tumor. So this tumor like blood is collected in the anterior compartment in front of the tibia and fibula, in front of the interosseous membrane. Now it is a ball like, so a ball is outside, a ball is inside also. So this ball like hematoma will press the deep peroneal nerve and the anterior tibial artery. So this injury happens to be very light type, but patient come after 7 days, because outside there will be no any problem. Skin will be okay, there will be no swelling, nothing is there, but internally already damage has occurred. So this hematoma will press the deep peroneal nerve and the anterior tibial artery. Because of the pressure on the anterior tibial artery, the blood supply beyond this point will be obstructed. No blood will go beyond this point of the hematoma formation in the anterior compartment. So what will happen? All the muscles will undergo avascular necrosis. Avascular necrosis will be there. And after the avascular necrosis, the muscles become ribbon-like, or they will be shrunk, and they will become smaller. And with the subsequent dryness or avascular atrophy of the muscle, whatever happens, the fingers will be in a state of dorsiflexion, because the tendons will be shrunk, and foot will be, patient come after 7 days with the foot in the dorsiflexion position. And this is also a further condition which is called the Volkmann's ischemic contracture. Volkmann's ischemic contracture is also present in the cubital fossa we have done, cubital tunnel syndrome. So this is the Volkmann ischemic contracture is a clinical condition caused due to the obstruction to the blood supply to the muscles, leading to their avascular necrosis, which is an irreversible phenomena, resulting in the fibrous or a shrunken tendons and the muscles. And the foot will be deformed, it will be slightly dorsiflexed, and unfunctional and non-functional type of the foot will be the result of this cricket ball anterior compartment syndrome, leading to the VIC, the Volkmann's ischemic contracture. On the other hand, the deep peroneal nerve will be also pressed. The pressure of this motor and sensory nerve will lead to the paralysis of the muscles of the anterior compartment. So muscle patient want to dorsiflex, but it cannot do because the nerve is pressed. So there is a compression neuropathy of the deep peroneal nerve because of the pressure effect. And why there is a slight dorsiflexion? It is because of the contracture due to the shortening and the thinning of the muscles and the tendons of the anterior compartment muscles due to the ischemia or loss of the blood supply or avascular necrosis. Then what is the treatment? So patient come late after 7 to 10 days, the injury has occurred and the damage has already there. Then the surgical treatment is that first we remove the hematoma, then we cut the tendons of the anterior compartment and we fix these tendons into a lower position because they are already fibrous, they are non-functional. So we fix them into the anterior part of the shaft of the tibia by screws, and the foot which is slightly dorsiflexed, now it comes down on the earth. So it will touching the ground. So that much we can do because there is the irreversible damage has occurred. The gangrene has been started. So that is called the transfixation operation is called. This is called the transfixation. So we have mobilized the fibrosed tendons of the muscles of the anterior compartment and we fix them into a lower position to the shaft of the tibia so that foot becomes functional again, and we apply the clip or clippers. So the clippers will be helping to move the foot slightly and prevent from the foot drop deformity, and patient is able to walk with the help of the clippers after the operation we provide to them. So this is, and another problem of the nerve is muscles are paralyzed, plus there will be loss of sensation of the skin in this area, which is supplied by the medial sensory branch of the patient, this deep peroneal nerve. So patient comes with the sensory loss of the cleft between the great toe and the first finger. So when there is a loss is there, it means we know that this is because of the deep peroneal nerve damage. So that is the clinical presentation of the patient of the anterior compartment syndrome. So that's what we do, the applied anatomy. Another applied anatomy is related to the dorsal pedis artery. As I have already told you that this artery helps with the collateral circulation, and injury to the posterior tibial or dorsal pedis artery is having no effect for the blood supply of the foot because they are having communication, anastomosis there. So dorsal pedis artery is used for the pulse. Counting, for example, if a patient comes which is not having the upper limb has been amputated because of some reason, then there will be no radial artery pulse. So where we will do, we can use the pulse of the dorsal because it lies superficially and against the bones, tarsal bone, so we can easily count the pulse of the patient. So this artery is used for the one of the artery for the peripheral pulse measurement. Another related to this dorsalis pedis arteries, as we have already done, the popliteal artery. Injury in popliteal fossa. So the popliteal fossa, as we know, the popliteal artery is the deepest content, and it is touching the popliteal surface of the femur. So whenever a patient comes with the fracture of the lower end of the femur, and we already know that the popliteal artery is running obliquely and touching the posterior surface or the popliteal surface of the femur, and this artery, popliteal artery, comes above the interosseous membrane, and here it divides into anterior and the posterior tibial artery. So whenever there is a fracture of the lower end of the femur, so this artery is liable to be injured or cut, the popliteal artery. So then the blood supply to the leg and foot muscle will be lost, and there will be no pulsations will be felt in the dorsalis pedis artery in this condition. So whenever a patient of the come in the accidental injury with the lower end of the femur fracture, then a surgeon should always check the pulsation in the dorsalis pedis artery, whether the popliteal artery is damaged or it is okay. The dorsalis pedis artery will tell. If we find the dorsalis pedis artery pulse is absent, it means the popliteal artery is injured in the popliteal fossa because of the fracture of the lower end of the femur. Immediately, we will shift the patient in the operation theatre. We open the popliteal fossa and we repair the artery, and the leg of the patient will be saved. If a doctor or orthopedician fails to check the dorsalis pedis artery in the case of the fracture of the lower end of the femur, and shifting the patient in the ward and postponing its treatment in the next morning or after a few hours, then after 6 hours what happens? Because of the rupture of the popliteal artery, all the muscles of the 3 compartments of the leg and the muscles of the sole and the dorsum of the foot will be without avascular necrosis. All the muscles undergo Volkmann's ischemic contracture. All the muscles will be undergo ischemia, and all the muscle will undergo gangrene. What is gangrene? Dead tissue in a living body. Dead tissue in a living body. All the muscles separated by the popliteal artery branches, anterior tibial, posterior tibial, and the peroneal artery, supplying all the 3 compartment muscles, all the muscles undergo gangrene, which is a irreversible phenomenon. Muscle will be damaged. They undergo necrosis. Death of the muscles will be there. And whenever the muscles, they are made up of the proteins, long chains of the protein. So when the muscles, they are damaged or necrosed or dead in a gangrene, so the end product of the protein metabolism, you know, is the formation of urea. So urea will be increasing in the patient of the necrosed tissues of the muscles of the body. So patient go into the uremia, and uremia is a very worse clinical condition because it leads to the renal failure, because kidney cannot throw out so much of the urea now formed because of the necrosis of the so many muscles of the leg and the foot, and the death of the patient may occur. So this is sequelae, that negligence of a doctor not checking the dorsalis pedis artery, and patient undergo the muscular necrosis, irreversible phenomena, and after 6 hours, when the doctor visits the patient, whole of the leg and the foot becomes dark blue and black color. Means necrosis is there, and life of the patient is now endangered. Then only treatment to save the life of the patient is amputation of the leg or amputation of the leg above the knee joint. We have to, so patient has to lose his leg and the foot for whole of the life only because of the negligence of the attending doctor. So this comes under the medical negligence. So this you can explain the applied anatomy related to the posterior fossa also, plus in the case of the anterior compartment. So that's all. Thank you.